Griffin. I am Deputy Director of Senate Committee Operations. Going to start off by calling the roll. So if you are present, if you could say here, please. Senator Ruff.
Here.
Senator Lewis. Senator McPike.
Here.
Delegate Mullen. Delegate Carter.
Here.
Delegate Reed.
Here.
Delegate Marshall. Delegate Byron. Brett Vassey.
Here.
DeWitt Hali.
Here.
Scott Tilley. Amanda Glover. Amy White.
Here.
Secretary Brian Ball.
Here.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to skip over introduction of members, which is on your agenda, so that we can go straight to the election of chair. I'll now open up the floor for nominations of chair.
I'd like to nominate Delegate Reed to chair the commission.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, there any other nominations? All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of Delegate Reed for chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Awesome. Delegate Reed, I'll now turn over the meeting to you if you would like to carry out the election of vice chair.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Griffin. So now we'll have nominations for vice chair. And if I can use chair's prerogative, I'd like to nominate Senator McPike.
Second.
There's a nomination and a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Sorry, I went away for a second. All those in favor of Senator McPike for vice chair indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. All right, thank you very much. And Senator McPike, I look forward to serving with you, and I look forward to being able to serve as chair. This is a commission that I think is, I was really pleased when the speaker appointed me to this, because I think the manufacturing environment and being able to develop manufacturing opportunities within the state of Virginia is something that's really important, not only in some of the areas where I know that Senator McPike represents up in Northern Virginia, but throughout the entire Commonwealth. And so this is something that I'm really committed to working on. While I represent an area in Northern Virginia, I know that it's very important that we develop business and manufacturing opportunities throughout the entire Commonwealth. So I really look forward to serving as chair and being able to work with all of you so that we can kind of move this forward and kind of re-energize this commission to be able to do some really great work over the next several sessions that we're able to work together. So thank you very much for your support and for being able to allow me to serve as chair. So Lindley, if I could ask you to kind of carry us through the next part of the agenda, if you wouldn't mind.
For the introduction.
Yes, please.
Okay, I feel the easiest way to do introductions for a commission of this size is if I call your name and you would like to introduce yourself to the commission. Senator Ruff.
I'm Frank Ruff. I represent the 15th Senate District, which runs across much of Southern Virginia from west of Danville to east of Hopewell.
Senator Lewis, I believe is not here. Senator McPike.
Jeremy McPike, representing the 29th Senate District, proud home to QMT wind chimes and Micron, and happy to serve on the commission.
Delegate Mullen, I believe, entered a few minutes ago.
He did, but I know that he was also in court, and so he was stepping in and out as necessary.
Got it. Delegate Carter.
I'm Lee Carter, delegate for the 50th district, which is the city of Manassas and parts of western Prince William County.
Delegate Marshall, I believe, is not here. Delegate Byron, no, I believe she's not here either. Brett Vassy.
Good morning, members of the commission. I'm the CEO of the Virginia Manufacturers Association. We represent the 6,000 factories in the Commonwealth and their supply chain. I've had the honor of serving on this commission through 5 governors, and the VMA had the privilege of helping to draft the statute to create this commission. So this is something near and dear to our heart and me in particular, and I look forward to working with you all. We've got just huge opportunities ahead of us, and look forward to working with the new chairs. And thank you for the QMT plug, Senator McPike. That's the chair of the VMA.
DeWitt Holly.
Yes, good morning. My name is Dawit Haile, and I'm the Dean for the College of Engineering and Technology at Virginia State University.
Scott Tilley, I believe, is not here. Amanda Glover. Amy White.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Dean of the School of STEM at Virginia Western Community College in Roanoke. We serve 5 counties and cities of Roanoke and Salem. We have an engineering and engineering technology programs, and Eldor is one of our local manufacturing partners.
Secretary Brian Ball. I believe you're on mute.
I am on mute. Thank you. Most common words spoken in the Western Hemisphere these days. Thank you all for having me. I'm Brian Ball. I'm Governor Northam's Secretary of Commerce and Trade. I've worked with many members as well as non-members that are on this commission, and my job is economic development, and by that I mean job creation and capital investment in Virginia, throughout Virginia. Amy mentioned Eldor. That was a project we worked on very hard when we first got into office. So that's what I do for a living here.
And then we have our chairman, Delegate Reed.
Thanks, Lindley. So I'm Delegate David Reed, and I represent the 32nd District, which is the eastern portion of Loudoun County, probably most famously known for the fact that we have one of the 3 internet peering nodes in the world, the one here, the one in Amsterdam, and the one in Singapore, where about 70% of the world's internet traffic flows through here. But despite all of that, with digital and service, something that is really important to me, as I said before, is manufacturing and be able to develop and grow businesses throughout the entire Commonwealth. I currently serve on the House Appropriations Committee and the Transportation Committee, and also P&E. And for those of you who aren't familiar with me, I was born and raised in Rockbridge County, Virginia. And Rockbridge County, Virginia used to be the home of Bluebird, as well as Burlington Textile and other things like that. So I have grown up with my dad being a factory worker at Burlington Textile. And so these are the types of jobs that I grew up around, but these are the things that are important. And I think they're important for us to be able to grow the economy in Virginia. So thanks again, Lindley. If there's no one else, it looks like the next thing that we have on the agenda is the discussion area. And we have a couple items with the PPP sales tax exemption and tax credit. And I know that I just talked to Brett about this, and I believe these are some things that Delegate Byron was looking at. It doesn't appear that she's on yet, and my name is attached to it, but I just literally got information about it about 2 minutes ago. So Brett, I'm going to ask if you could share with the commission here conceptually what it is that we were talking about earlier.
Thank you, Delegate. Also, I just got a text. Oh, there we go. I got a text from Delegate Byron. She was having trouble getting in. She says she's on the phone now. I don't know, Lindley, if you can see her.
I cannot, but I'll check with our IT.
Okay. While she's trying to get in, there are 2 issues that we have brought forward as concerns and opportunities. One is pertaining to profiting from the pandemic. We think it would be a good bill for the manufacturers in the state if we could have a sales tax exemption on all PPE products in particular, if we can draw them back to the PPE products that are mandated by the Virginia COVID emergency temporary standard that has been promulgated by the Safety and Health Codes Board. So we have done that in the past. This commission was the advocate for exempting pollution control equipment from taxation for manufacturers because it's mandated by code. The same concept would be true. You just have to, as legislators, make a decision on a sales tax exemption. Would you expand that more broadly to all businesses, of course, but even your average citizen, like we do with some food and medicine? The second item would be a tax credit concept where, and that admittedly is going to be a little harder, but the idea would be, could we put forward in this session a tax credit that would be for all of those products that manufacturers have to purchase to comply with the mandatory ETS as well. And why this is important in manufacturing, who has had to stay open through the entire pandemic for supply chain, for everything from food to medicine to construction, all the things that we manufacture in Virginia. They've had to go to some pretty great lengths in order to keep physical separation and meet that 6-foot social distancing and a lot of technology investments. And when they have down economy, that's the rationale why we would need it. Delegate Reed and I talked briefly this morning. The key to this would probably be the sunset, because it wouldn't be needed forever. And it would be, is it retroactive to January of this year? That would be a decision in the draft, either bill. And how long would it extend? Would the sunset be when we end the ETS, when we reach a 70% vaccination? We talked about that this morning. The devil's in the details on that. But Delegate Byron has had both of those drafted just so they have a placeholder. And it would be up to the commission members who would be chief co-patrons or chief patrons of those bills if we can move those this session. So that was the concept, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Brett. And I see a phone call on here now, so I'm hoping that that's Delegate Byron. Have you joined us, Delegate Byron?
Yes, both Delegate Marshall and I could not get on the Zoom. It says invalid link. So we tried since the start of the meeting. I apologize that we were not able to be with you, but I'd much rather see you than talk on the phone. But
I understand that. And what we've done initially, so if you, and I don't see another phone showing up.
Trying to dial in now. Delegate Marshall's trying to dial in now. So I don't know if he got on yet or not.
Okay. We just went around and asked everybody to give a brief introduction. So if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself to the rest of the commission members, and then we'll see if Delegate Marshall is able to join.
Okay, thanks so much. Well, first of all, I represent the 22nd District, which is part of the city of Lynchburg, part of Campbell, part of Bedford, and part of Franklin County. And I've been on the commission for quite a few years now, and really glad that we are going to get things back up and rolling again and be able to see ways that we can assist the manufacturing communities, not only in growing their businesses, but things that they might have from state government that we can help them with. So I appreciate being on the commission, and thank you for the time that you have. Look forward to working with you.
Yes, you too, Delegate Byron. And Lindley, I don't see another phone call dialing in yet. Do you?
I do not. And Delegate Byron, our IT department just reset the Zoom link to your D Byron email. If you want to check that video in.
Can they send one to Danny Marshall too, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Chair Reed, this is Brian Ball. I had a little trouble getting in too, and I had to put my personal my personal Zoom password in, and then it let me right in. So I don't know if that would help Delegate Byron or Delegate Marshall.
Thank you, Secretary. I did try just typing the Zoom number in, and that still didn't work, even before you get to the code. So I'm not sure what the situation is. And can you tell me what email address you sent that to? I hate to interrupt the meeting like this, but I can't get on.
Go ahead, Delegate Byron.
It was sent to dbyron@house.virginia.gov.
Okay, that's why we don't have those kind of addresses anymore. It's DELKByron@house.virginia.gov. They don't use just the D anymore on the emails that I'm aware of.
Okay. I believe IT heard that, so they'll resend it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's my understanding that one of those is for some email and the other one is for email that none of us use. So you're right, Delegate Byron. We all use the DEL, first initial, last name, and then everything else after that.
Yes. Okay, and I just got it. Thank you.
All right, we'll wait just a second and see if you're able to join via video.
The other one has been sent to Del D. Marshall at House.
Delegate Byron, it looks like you're joining.
Yes, I'm working on that.
Okay. There we go. You're on mute now. All right, good morning.
I'm with you now.
So I'm going to put you on the spot again because in the agenda, Brett had just provided some information on the PPE sales tax exemption and the PPE tax credit. And I believe he had indicated that those are pieces of legislation that you've already drafted. So he had given us an overview of those, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to provide any additional input on those. And then we can discuss a way forward. And it may be that you and I need to have a discussion offline to kind of figure out the details, because I know one of the things that Brett and I have already talked about is figuring out how this actually gets sunsetted, and we can then take a look at that.
Well, we certainly, thank you very much. We certainly hope that we can sunset this, by the end of the year. And I would say when the concern of the virus goes away is when the need for some of the PPE should go away as well. And a lot of the things that have already been implemented, we didn't talk about any kind of retroactive or anything, but there are still obligations. So I don't know if they want to address any kind of retroactive, because that would mean that there would be a fiscal impact because they've already, those taxes have already been brought in. But the idea is with the PPE and any additional that businesses are going to be required to do because of government mandates, that we shouldn't profit off of that. And this way it should not have a forward-going impact to localities or anyone else, because it's not something long-term that would be like your property tax or other things that interfere. I think it's a great idea for the state to be able to assist in keeping everyone safe. There's a lot of CARES money, and this should have been something that maybe we thought of some time ago. So I hope everyone will support it. And when the drafts are done, I will certainly, they may be done anytime. It's been in for a couple of weeks now. I will have a conversation.
I can sympathize with that. We submitted my draft legislation before the 30th of November, and we've gotten 2 of the 7 back. So I'm assuming that they're working on it. So Delegate Byron, if I can just ask you to hold on for a second. Delegate Marshall, welcome. And I wanted to give you an opportunity because earlier we had done an introduction of members. So if you'd like to take an opportunity to introduce yourself, and apologize for the delay with the links for being able to get in.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for helping me get on the call today. So I have been a member of this commission since day one, so I'm glad that we are reviving this. This is really important, especially to my part of the state. I represent all of the city of Danville and Pittsylvania County and part of Henry County. And for example, the city of Danville at one time in Pittsylvania County, 40% of its jobs was in manufacturing. And when something called NAFTA passed, that giant sucking sound, you could actually hear that on Main Street in Danville when you lose a company like a Dan River Incorporated that had 12,000 jobs here in the city of Danville. So we are, in my part of the state, still working to try to get manufactured jobs. We just got one last year that's doing really well. They have about 800 employees in less than a year. So we're still working on manufacturing. Our community college plays a vital role in that. A bill that Senator Ruff and Delegate Byron put in a few years ago to help train the workers, and so it's really important. Delegate Reed, since I've got the mic, I will. One of the things that we did that I found really educational is that Brett Vassy would set up tours of different businesses for us, manufacturing type businesses. And so in this virtual world, I've talked to the Dominion people about doing a virtual tour of the the wind farms out in the offshore. And so maybe that could be for our next meeting. So, but it's glad you get us back together. Thank you.
Yeah, so Delegate Marshall, if I can just add one thing to one of the things that you were talking about, and you were talking about the addition of manufacturing down in the area where you are now. One of the things that I was talking about earlier in the week with Stephen Murray with VEDP is the ability to tap into some people like ourselves on this particular, especially the elected officials, to be able to go and do business retention visits to some of those manufacturing groups so that we can actually let them know that we really do appreciate them being here in the Commonwealth, and then being able to address concerns and issues that they have before we find out that they've now decided to move their job someplace else. And so that was one of the things that I do want to follow up with Stephen Murray on, and I've said to him that this is something that I think we need to be doing. And I see Delegate Mullen had something that he wanted to add.
And, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I've just been made aware of the fact that our live stream is currently down. And so for those who are not participating, they are not able to view us right now.
Okay, Lindley, did you hear that?
This is Marianne, IT, and I currently see it. So, but we are checking on it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Delegate Mullen. And another thing, Delegate Mark, area out there, I'm still holding out hope that I'm going to be able to actually take the boat ride out there and visit it. But a virtual tour would be a good second choice.
My preference would be I'll go with you on the boat also. I'd like to do that on a calm day.
Yes, very much so. So I'd like to go on to the next item that we had on the agenda. And Brett, you're listed here to talk about the Buy American Made electric utility construction. And so we're going to move forward, and because the folks who are doing the IT stuff are working through the actual IT issues. So Brett, if you can kind of go ahead and give us some information on this next item on the agenda.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all know that this last session we passed the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which over the next 20 years, I think, contemplates a $60 billion investment in change out of energy infrastructure and construction of new energy infrastructure, the offshore wind farm being one of them. One of the items that did not get amended in the last session, there was a using Virginia labor provision added in the late negotiations of VCEA, but there was no consideration of Buy American in any of those infrastructure projects that were mandated under VCEA. We thought that this would be this would be the best commission of any to consider how to do that without creating harm to the or inflating costs, because of course the VCA, we all know, is very expensive. But we do think that there's a way to do it. States like California have done this, who we're modeling our energy policies after. And there are ways to have a Buy American consideration for the utilities in their procurement. It doesn't mean that it's an absolute. I don't think you'd find manufacturers supporting an absolute Buy American only. That's not realistic with a global supply chain. But at least some consideration mirroring what we did with Virginia labor. So conceptually, that was the idea. I know that Senator DeStaff, who used to be on this commission, has asked for a bill to be pre-filed. It will require, of course, a number of co-patrons to get that type of bill through. And of course, we know that it's going to require a Democratic chief co-patron, if not a co-patron, a chief patron, I should say, in the Senate to help with that. And so Senator DeStaff could not join today, but he did put the placeholder in and asked if we would just share that there is a great deal of interest in at least a nod to, if you're going to build all of these products or components, can you at least make a first shot at buying American? That's the idea.
Okay, thank you, Brett. I'm going to ask Vice Chairman McPike whether or not you've had any discussions with Senator DeStaff on this. And while you're thinking about that, I think one of the things that we'll have to do as far as a takeaway from both of these is that we'll need to be able to get draft legislation back from Delegate Byron and from Senator DeStaff. And then, because I think that this commission is limited to 4 actual meetings during the course of the year, so we'll have to address, and Brett or Delegate Byron, who's been here before, Delegate Marshall, if there's a method or a process for us to be able to share those type of things and have virtual discussions about a way forward that does not mean that we're exceeding the number of meetings that we can have. So Senator McPike, I'll just go to you next and see if you've had discussions with Senator DeStaff on this.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have not heard from Senator DeStaff on this subject.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Byron.
This is our first meeting, so I think we still have the ability to get something in for this last quarter too, if you need to get another meeting in, briefly to go over legislation. We can always do that like this, first week or whatever time works for you.
Right. We can do it in early January or as soon as we have the drafts back.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
In years past, we did that. We met actually the Tuesday before the Wednesday, original meeting that when we went into session to endorse bills and go over these. And so I don't know, just put that on the table. We could virtually do that.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Thank you. That's good to know, because we sure ought to have the drafts back by then. Okay. Next, Ms. Griffin, we have a period of public comment, and I see that we have several different speakers. Do we have 3 speakers addressing Buy American Made and Tested PPE?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have Bob Morris and also Russ Rogers. We also have a third person wanting to speak. Her name is Elizabeth Charity.
Okay, good. Can you add them? Are they added now to the Zoom? And Mr. Morris, just because you're first on the list here for the agenda, if you'd like to begin, that would be great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bob Morris, Center for Applied Innovation. We're based here in Yorktown, Virginia. I connected with Brett Vassey and the great folks at the Manufacturers Association, as well as our colleagues from BRS who will speak after me in regard to PPE when we formed what became the Hand Sanitizer Consortium to coordinate hand sanitizer production, starting with breweries, distilleries, and wineries in Virginia, and then expanding out. We've since then begun to expand to other PPE areas with the objective to onshore PPE from Virginia first and then U.S. made companies, stressing on building small business capacity in these areas. The key to this was that we saw that small businesses are really the lifeblood of the economy, and they remain the COVID-19 lifeline. As you all well know, 44% of the U.S. economy is driven by small businesses, in particular to Virginia. 75% of DoD contractors are prime contractors or small businesses. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, about 38% of those businesses as of March found it was unlikely that they would, throughout the country, that they would reopen at the end of 2020. About 40% of them closed. So what we saw was an initiative here that PPE really has become the new microchip. Virginia's equivalent to Silicon Valley, for lack of a better term. In the area of hand sanitizer, we rapidly developed the capacity to produce over 10,000 gallons of 80% hand sanitizer a day. Most of the initial participants that had closed down rehired all of their staff and additional staff. And when they couldn't produce drinkable spirits, they transitioned into hand sanitizers, much of which, tens of thousands of dollars of which were donated to healthcare professionals, first responders, and others. So this literally put hundreds of people back to work. I'll give you a really quick example of a related area. There's a small company in Virginia making a nanoseptic application that goes on surfaces that's now increasingly widely used in Virginia agencies. They grew from 3 employees to 20. They invested over $1 million in production assets just since COVID-19. They paid millions of dollars in local, state, and federal taxes. They did $650,000 in new construction, and their international exports from Virginia went up over $750,000. That's just one example. You'll hear from BRS in a second, our colleagues from the working the masks, and they're another prime example of this. Where this went from there is we became nationally recognized for short, resilient, adaptable supply lines. The U.S. Air Force COVID-19 Task Force highlighted this in a report to the Air Force Chief of Staff and the Department of Defense as a starting point for a model for how this could be used nationally when the next global crisis arrives, well beyond COVID-19. Recently, we've become a signatory and one of less than 25 private sector entities that was chosen as a charter subject matter expert on the FEMA manufacturing and distribution of critical healthcare resources voluntary agreement. And we have a seat on one of the major working groups. We're also working with the USDA and others on potential R&D opportunities in these areas with Virginia institutions of higher education, particularly the one we've talked to most recently is Virginia Tech. Where this links into the great work that Brett and his folks are doing is that Virginia is immediately at risk of losing this capacity, and it will likely not be there when needed again if something like this legislation isn't passed. Give an example. Small businesses right now are in the fight of their life in the market as it's flooded with inexpensive and mostly imported PPE, particularly hand sanitizers, some other areas that's of much lower quality, that's not held to the same standards. State agencies that called and once relied on them have shifted from the quality stuff to low bid, best technically acceptable, and they're not requiring things like the testing and the evaluation. The FDA, our sites have been inspected by the FDA that are required of U.S. manufacturers, and so that adds to the cost. And to give you a snapshot of this, You're all probably well aware that there were tens of thousands of breweries and distilleries and wineries who stood up to make hand sanitizer across the United States. As of the other day, only 641 of them remain to continue making hand sanitizer in December. And that number, according to the FDA, is likely to go down. There are less than 20 left in Virginia because of this. Small business right now are at the point where they're deciding whether or not they're going to stay in or get out of retooling. Another example is because of the way this works in the procurement process and the low bid technically acceptable piece, is that right now the consortium is selling hand sanitizers to customers in 49 to 50 states, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. The only state that went to zero so far is Virginia. The problem that comes out to, and give you an example, is one of the mandatory sources in Virginia, which is the Virginia Industries for the Blind, is now buying all of their stuff from Korea, China, and Vietnam. Some of these are marking it up about 2,000%. And that company that I talked to you about that's making the nano sanitizer, one of the state mandatory sources recently announced that it was making an arrangement with Korea to purchase that, which would replace it and eliminate that. And just so you all know, and we have more detail on this because we've done some briefings for state agencies, the company in Korea that makes this quote unquote nanoseptic wrap that would be cheaper is actually a company that makes car wraps, and their advertising and claims would not be legal for a U.S. company, according to the FDA. And so a lot of these folks have been told that they would buy from Virginia companies and U.S. companies if they could beat the price they get from overseas, so that a lot of these agencies can get that 2,000% markup. So I'm going to turn it over now to our colleagues at BRS, but I would just end by saying that what the folks in our group are looking for is just an even playing field. And we're also looking for everyone to be held to the same standards, because there's a significant health risk involved when you're buying this cheap stuff. And we have more examples, Mr. Chairman, we can provide to you. And we're happy to give you more details and also some actual demonstrations like we did for the agency on how this works. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our colleagues at BRS.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, and good morning to the entire commission and others who are in attendance this morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. These opportunities don't come frequently, so we very much appreciate it. This morning, I hope I can provide a bit more perspective on the U.S. and the Virginia problem with the reliance, or really an addiction, to foreign-made PPE. As Bob said, my name is Russ Rogers. I'm the CEO of a company called Blackbriar Regulatory Services. And I'm sure, sorry, got something on my screen here. I'm sure that many of you have never heard of Blackbriar Regulatory Services, but we are a Virginia-based regulatory company that helps our customers comply with the FDA. And more important to today's discussion, we're also a manufacturer of competitively priced 3-layered disposable face masks like we all see being worn all around town. Unlike many Asian-produced masks, our masks have been tested for key performance criteria established by the FDA, including things like filtration, biocompatibility, fit, and comfort. We all know the common problems seen with imported masks. We've worn them. We know what the problems are. Frequent ear loop failures, ineffective filtration, breathing difficulty due to inferior filtration layers, skin rashes. We all know what these problems are. The good news is you don't experience these problems with our masks in the higher quality masks, and this is substantiated by testing data we provide from reputable third-party labs. We make several different specification masks, and they're designed to meet the needs of consumer, government, medical customers, really masks to meet the needs of really any industry. Over the last 6 months, we've added over 100 employees, 5 machines, and built an expanded quality control lab right here in Richmond to allow us to manufacture millions of masks a month in our FDA-registered device facility. Additionally, we built a supply chain that provides us with key filtration materials that are also manufactured right here in the US. That's very uncommon. The majority of the supply chain does originate in Asia. So taking the time to find high quality filtration media made right here in the US is part of the solution to provide a high quality mask. We've ramped up to produce high quality masks to help Virginia businesses and the Virginia government overcome many of the PPE challenges that have been painfully highlighted by this current pandemic. When our customers buy masks manufactured right here in Virginia, they avoid supply disruptions such as customs and other logistics delays. And we can quickly track the status of any given order because we're right here in the state in the same time zone. We can put masks on our customers' shelves almost immediately. We even have our own trucking service that we put in place in order to distribute masks inside of the state. We guarantee quality and supply. We all know that's very difficult when products are being supplied through networks of importers, resellers, repackagers, and distributors using products sourced from Asia. It can be almost impossible. I know the state of Virginia, many of the agencies have experienced issues with exactly that problem. Our customers don't incur those issues when they buy from a manufacturer right here in Virginia. Our customers can come see the masks that they're ordering being made in our facility. Mr. Morris, who just spoke, Mr. Bassey, and even U.S. Rep. Spanberger have toured our manufacturing facility. And I think it's fair to say they were all pleasantly surprised to see what was going on right here in the state capitol. Over the last 6 to 9 months, we've all been reminded that masks and other PPE need to be considered a strategic commodity. Something that we didn't give a moment's thought to a year ago has suddenly become an item that's at the forefront of our strategy, critical part of reopening the state and the country. This was well illustrated by the 60 Minutes piece that ran just this last weekend that I'm sure many of you saw, and it raised a number of alarming points that Bob has commented on, and then I'm commenting on as well today. Blackbriar Regulatory Services very much needs your support to keep our work going for today and for beyond COVID-19. I don't think any of us think it's a good strategy to get people into business just to get us through COVID-19. And then should this, and when it does happen again, find ourselves back in the same boat. The support we could really use from you folks is ensuring the Virginia government agencies buy PPE that's actually made here in the state of Virginia. So manufactured in the state of Virginia, not just simply repackaged and sold as made in Virginia. We would suggest also that bids for critical PPE like face masks include a more complete specification and require legitimate third-party testing that better defines what technically acceptable really means. This is a technical product. We've even seen examples of face masks being sold in the state of Virginia, where the filtration layer, if you take these masks apart, is nothing more than tissue paper. That's very concerning, gives the user a false sense of security and just should not be tolerated. Being a regulatory services company, Blackbriar already does regulatory compliance training, and we're in a very good position to do training for procurement professionals on the details of this technical product to ensure procurement folks are better informed on the bids that are being drafted, how the products compare, with the bids that are submitted, and what may be compromised for the sake of a couple of pennies here and there. Also, with the right support, we're very capable of expanding our production of 3-layer masks. We're at 5 machines now. We have a strategy to take us to 15 machines if business allows. And we also have a plan to quickly add N95 production right here at our Richmond facility in a very short period of time. Equally important is the shortfall of rapid turnaround time labs to verify the quality of products that's being supplied under contracts. Blackbriar has an entire regulatory and analytical team that's very well prepared to establish a Virginia-based mask performance verification lab quickly with the right assistance and under the right conditions. We certainly very much, being right here in Richmond, very much welcome a visit from any of you folks at any time. Very happy to do that. We do frequent tours of our production. And obviously, I'm very happy to answer any questions that might come up. Thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
So thank you, Mr. Morris. I think before we have questions, we had one other person, Ms. Charity, who was going to speak on this. And so we'll let Ms. Charity speak, and then we'll go back and we'll have questions. Ms. Charity, did you want to address this topic?
Hello.
Hi, Ms. Charity, did you want to address this topic on the Buy American Made and Tested PPE?
No, I do not.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I understood that you wanted to speak to this. So let's open it up for questions for Mr. Morris and for Mr. Rogers. And I'd like to just start by saying that this is really a true success story as far as you being able to develop a supply chain and the ability to be able to meet this strategic demand. I do have one question, that when Congresswoman Spanberger came and visited, and you brought this up with her, is there any possibility that there's going to be anything done at the federal level? Because a lot of these things, when you're dealing with imports from abroad, that is something that occurs at the federal level, where we here in the state of Virginia can, much like what you're saying, we can encourage or direct the Virginia state government to actually make Buy Virginia decisions, but to solve kind of the bigger problem, that's going to require federal involvement. And I was just curious if, when you brought this up with her, what type of input you received about the possibility of being able to see anything done at the federal level.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. As you probably know, I assume you do, Ms. Spanberger's, Representative Spanberger's background is very much fosters strategic thinking, and she drilled into that point very quickly on her visit. The risks related to the supply chain, the raw materials going all the way back to Asia, the equipment, buying the equipment comes from Asia, the raw materials come from Asia. She viewed that as a key vulnerability, and she did discuss with us what it would take to reshore some of that production, even before the face mask. Reshore the production of the equipment and the raw materials. We had a lengthy discussion with her. She didn't offer a comment at that point about how she might go about addressing that. It was a couple of weeks before the election. She was a bit rushed for time, obviously, but this is very much on the forefront of her mind.
Okay, very good. And I have one other question, and then I'll open it up to other members or comment, because the work that I do now is I work as a defense contractor. And so I'm very familiar with the fact at the federal level that there's oftentimes things that they procure through this low price, technically acceptable approach. And oftentimes it's not the things that need to be procured through LPTA, whether it's something like this. It's like, okay, if you're buying furniture chairs, maybe that's the right answer. But something like this that actually, as you indicated, has a certain degree of technology and testing that's required is not something that should be done as LPTA. So again, I think that's something that we need to be able to address with our federal delegation and get them to put more pressure on the agencies that are doing the procurement. And I just wanted to see if you wanted to have any thoughts or comments on that before we get questions from others.
I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of one of the points I was making when I spoke. These face masks, while they're sold as a commodity in many stores and that sort of thing, the FDA classifies them as Class 2 medical devices and provides a very detailed specification on ASTM performance characteristics that these masks are supposed to make. I think many of us have been in a Walgreens or a CVS or whatever and seen masks there. Routinely, the package will have some sort of fancy looking certificate of analysis on it. Most of the time they're stamped with the FDA logo, which the FDA very much frowns upon. And when you dig into it, the majority of those certificates, frankly, are bogus. We really need to start focusing, as I was talking about a little while ago, on legitimate test data, not just test data, but legitimate test data that shows that a product meets the FDA's definition for these face masks. That's, I think, one of the ways, if we're all going to wear face masks, let's hope that they're doing their job.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. So if other members have a question, please, I mean, in the Zoom format, just please kind of try not to step over each other, but I'll go with Senator McPike first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the comments from Mr. Rogers and others on it. I guess my question would maybe be to Brett Vassy. I mean, there seems to be a common thread, and I've dealt with it also with state agencies for construction materials and supplies that are manufactured in Virginia. I think as well as other different products that I see being procured by our own state taxpayer dollars that are going elsewhere, whether overseas or other states. And it seems to be sort of a consistent thread of sort of a procurement specification problem and or the ability to specify Virginia products gets into a little bit of interesting conflict with other states or other trade issues. Brett, can you comment and help inform the commission a little bit more on some of the efforts in the past and what are some of the obstacles? Because it sounds like that's a similar thread, whether it's in fabrics, materials, other supplies that are made right here in Virginia. How do we tackle that?
Mr. Chairman and Senator McPike, there are probably two ways to do this, and I think that the chairman bifurcated the issue really well. When it comes to LPTA, low price, technically acceptable, there are probably some products in state procurement that just should, perhaps are more important than others for strategic purposes, like pandemics. And I think that there would be consensus among the manufacturers that if those did not have LPTA applied to them, but the equal playing across all products with a verification of third-party testing would get at fair pricing and get at an adequate product. And I think there would be consensus among the manufacturers. You may have procurement officers who are wedded to their relationships, but you're the legislature, they're the executive. You'll have to deal with that, in the legislative process. However, I think in general products, like we started the conversation around energy infrastructure and just general products that the state procures, I think there has been, there's a general sense that giving absolute preferences in those categories is probably not what the industry would look for, because then you end up in a little bit of a price war between states. If we do it, then Minnesota may do it and Maryland may do it. And where the industry has gone in the past is giving a requirement for consideration of Buy American, which is not really required at all. And maybe putting some parameters around that within a threshold, meaning if, you can give a preference if it's only within a couple of percentage points, that kind of idea. The one area where the VMA has been involved, the last big challenge we had in procurement, there's a very small section of state procurement, and we call it the reciprocity clause. And it basically says that on any product in procurement, if a state or country gives a percentage preference or an absolute preference for that product, if a company from that country or that state applies for a competition around a Virginia contract, that absolute preference will negate their ability to compete, and their percentage preference will be applied as a penalty to their Virginia bid. But that's not a required consideration in procurement. The company has to know that clause exists, and they have to ask for it to be applied, and it's at the discretion of the procurement officer to apply it. So it's almost never used. That's the last big time, and that was almost 10 years ago. It's been that long since we have really looked at how to deal with made in the USA, made in Virginia products and deal with procurement. It's been 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one quick follow-up to Mr. Rogers, just on the production of N95s. Are you guys planning to be fully vertically integrated with poly as well?
Mr. Rogers, you're on the mute.
Not full vertical integration. We do have a contract in place to supply US-made filtration media, which would be the foundational part of those masks. Unfortunately, a large majority of the commodity type materials, the inner and outer layer, for example, about the only place to get those is Asia. That entire industry has moved offshore.
Delegate Byron, I think I saw that you were unmuted. Do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to make a comment. I certainly appreciate the presentation, and the question that followed by Senator McPike was very informative too. But two of the people in our district, one was mentioned, Nanocept is in my district, and Senator Ruff and Delegate Marshall actually supported when they were a startup R&D company with the Tobacco Commission, with some state funded to assist in some of their research and timing, whether it, unfortunately is because of a virus, but there were other great uses for it, but they have really stepped up to the plate, and Lightsheet is doing some fantastic work. I understand it'd be good to maybe have, I don't know, it's this meeting or another meeting, Brett, kind of highlight some of the manufacturers within our state that have really stepped up, that are doing some great things to combat the issues that people are experiencing in the workplace and dealing with the virus. It would be very informative for everyone, and I think rewarding to hear some of the things that are being done. But I wanted to kudos to my district for those two companies that are really doing a great job. I don't know that I was pleased to hear that they were selling, but I'll have to check into the details of that when we get off this conversation. So thank you very much.
So Delegate Byron, maybe next time that I come down to Smith Mountain Lake, we can go on a tour together.
There you go. I'd be glad to do that. Thank you.
Secretary Ball, I see that you're unmuted. Did you have a question?
I had a comment or two, if you would indulge me.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you. It's interesting, when we started in this pandemic, we were begging, borrowing, and I would say cheating to get any kind of PPP in here for state, for our health systems and all of that. And I will tell you, it's a process that I never want to live through again. And so the comments earlier about this sort of thing being a strategic commodity are absolutely right on the mark. And I just wanted to assure you all from the administration that we are currently talking with a variety of manufacturers, large and small, in Virginia about manufacturing in Virginia PPP items for not only this pandemic, but we're sure we'll probably be wrestling around with similar sorts of incidents in the future, so that we have a ready local manufacturers, local supply, and we are looking not only to the end product, but back into the supply chain. Senator McPike mentioned the poly. We're also looking at the filter manufacturing and that sort of thing, so that we can have, we know we can have access to PPP in emergency situations. The second thing I wanted to say on the procurement generally, the Buy America, there can be unintended consequences to that. And Senator DeSteff's bills in the past have invited some of those consequences. So, for example, I think one of his bills talked about preferences for steel. And when that bill dropped, we quickly got a call from our friends in Canada who said, look, we're doing these sorts of projects in Ontario, and we're buying all of our steel from U.S. manufacturers, including one in Virginia. And if you do this to us, we're going to do it to you. So I would just ask you all to be mindful that you will invite those sorts of behaviors if you sort of go sort of writ large down that path. So those are my two comments, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Ball. I mean, that really highlights that we do live in an ever interconnected world community and a supply chain. So I appreciate those comments. Did anyone else have any questions for Mr. Morris or Mr. Rogers? All right, thank you very much for your presentations. This has really been very informative, especially about all the work that has been done as far as being able to actually spin up these new businesses to be able to actually create PPE and hand sanitizer, and the fact that we all know that there's going to be an ongoing demand for these type of services. And so it would be really great if we could actually kind of maintain those businesses and help grow them and be able to supply those products, not only in Virginia, but across the entire nation and potentially across the world. So thanks very much for your presentations. So I believe next on the agenda is Mr. David Lyons, who has a public comment on energy intensive trade, exposed manufacturing. So is Mr. Lyons on the call?
Chairman, Mr. Lyons emailed me yesterday. I apologize. I don't know if the message got to staff, but he had a last minute conflict and could not present today.
Okay, I think I did receive the documents that he was going to present, so I'll review those, and perhaps when we reschedule for another meeting, he might be able to present. Okay, very good. So I think that brings us to the end of the agenda today. I think we have a couple action items, and those are, and I'm going to just go through these, and then I'm going to give our Vice Chairman, Jeremy McPike, an opportunity to wrap up before we adjourn. But we have a couple of action items. One is that we should look at scheduling another meeting on possibly the Tuesday before session, and that when we get the legislation from Delegate Byron and from Delegate DeSteff, those will be disseminated, and we'll have an opportunity to review those and have discussions about those going forward. And then we have some other longer term type of things where, Brett, I can reach out to you about some possible tours or information about manufacturers. And then again, I will tell you that I have also talked to Stephen Murray about possibly having them come and brief us about the kind of the overall state of manufacturing from their perspective and what we can do in the state of Virginia, and both what they're doing as well as in the legislature to be able to make Virginia a destination place for manufacturing. So I'm hoping that they will take me up on that offer for a future meeting. And again, I know that I volunteered this with Delegate Byron, but I really think that the members of this commission are really in a good place for us to be able to work with you, Brett, and with VEDP and Secretary Ball to kind of go and visit some of these manufacturing facilities and let them know that they are important to the state of Virginia, and to have those discussions with them now before we hear about it in the press that they're looking at leaving. So I think that we can do some proactive business retention, and this is a great commission to be able to kind of initiate that. So I think that that is probably the items that I have as far as action items for us to come out of this. Is there anything else that I missed before? Like I said, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chairman McPike for any last words, and then we'll do a motion to adjournment. But it looks like Delegate Byron, you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't want to make you feel bad, but you missed out on a Little Debbie's tour. That was really good to kind of see some of the work that they're doing in the Valley. And, also they're hiring a lot of, individuals that have disabilities that are able to help them too. So they have a great program going there. And we saw how plastic bags were made. We've had some great opportunities to go, it's kind of like the old tours when you found out how a cow produces milk, it doesn't just come in the store, but manufacturing has its own story. And there's some great things for us to be seen while we do those kind of tours. So I think that's great. Thank you.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I will tell you that I am committed to actually doing something with this commission. And that's the reason why that I was so very excited to have the speaker appoint me to this. And as I've said to others, I'm happy to travel, and we're getting back to a point where I think we've figured out how to travel and visit with each other in a safe manner. So I will definitely take you up on any of those invitations. So if there's nothing else, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn it over to. Go ahead, Brett.
Mr. Chairman, just one final note. I know many of the members are new, and it's often unknown where are the manufacturers, how many are there. So we have actually built a portal. It's called the Manufacturing Economic Impact Portal. I've sent it to Lindley. She can share it with the commission members. You can just put in your district number, your Senate or House district number. It will tell you how many manufacturers, their payroll, their employees, what taxes they paid. It gives you a soup to nuts overview of your district.
Fantastic. That's good to know. Okay, so last words before we adjourn, Vice Chairman McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great, well-run meeting, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the opportunity to work with commission members here. Look forward to continuing my own personal education in this area with some, great facilities in Manassas and Prince William County. Again, with QMT, wind chimes, and Micron, and several others that are important to our district. And I know that same thing is true for everyone's district around the Commonwealth, and look forward to collaboration and with this group. So with that, Mr. Chairman, move that the commission adjourn.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second? There's a second. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great rest of your week and weekend. We are now adjourned. Thank you very much, Lindley and staff.